Hello, thank you for joining SSS and SSS STEM with our short workshop video. We'll be talking about plagiarism and how you can avoid any mistakes that may disrupt your academic career. Before we start, please check out the links listed to find us on the Texas A&M website, and also follow us on social media to get any up-to-date information about our department and services. What do you think the definition of plagiarism is? Many students really think that plagiarism is defined as using someone's exact words and putting that in your own writing without giving credit. However, the definition of plagiarism is a little broader than that. It also involves using other people's ideas, their style of language, even their visuals that they may have developed. All those things could be considered plagiarism if you're not giving credit for them. Why do people plagiarize in their writing? There are three really common reasons that we see, especially with students in their writing. The first one is that many students just make mistakes in their citations. They don't really know how to cite things correctly, and so when they turn in a paper with all those sorts of errors, the professor might consider that a plagiarized paper. Another common reason for students when it comes to plagiarism is that they feel overwhelmed by an assignment. They feel like their own ideas are not nearly as good as any of the ideas they have read in the sources, and that they don't feel confident about their own writing enough to use it, as opposed to using someone else's ideas. The third most common reason that a student plagiarizes is that they simply run out of time to complete the assignment. You may have had this situation yourself where you were up the night before, you're trying to finish a 10-page paper and you realize that time is ticking away. For some students that creates a sense of desperation, and what they do is they take matters into their own hands and plagiarize the writing of someone else, just so they have something to turn into the professor. So in many cases, the professors do take into account why a student plagiarized, but in other cases they don't. The penalty may be the same no matter what your reason is. When citing, there are three main situations that you need to keep in mind when you're writing a paper. The first is whenever you use information that comes from an outside source, whether it's direct words or just the ideas from that source. You definitely need to cite where you got the information from. So some of the more common types of sources that you'll use when you're doing academic writing are journal articles, newspaper articles, books, maybe even magazines. But you need to broaden your definition of what source is when you're thinking about citing your sources. You also need to consider television programs, movies, like documentaries, any type of information that you may have gotten from YouTube or any other website as well. All of your information needs to be cited. The second type of information that you need to be sure to cite is any information that you may have gained from doing an interview or have a conversation with someone else. So say your professor gives you an assignment where you need to go and interview a professional from a company, and you end up using some of that information in your paper. You need to make sure that you cited that person in your paper because that information came from somewhere else. Third type of source that you need to be sure you cite is any type of visuals that you use in your paper that you may have gotten from somewhere else. So say you're working on a paper and you find this really great diagram in a journal article that ties really well into the writing that you're doing. It's fine for you to use that diagram in your paper, but you need to tell your reader where you found that diagram. So to sum up the three types of information that you need to cite in your paper, the first is any source that you find. The second would be any information you gained from an interview. And the third would be any visuals that you've used in your paper. There are, however, other situations where you don't need to worry about documenting. First of those is when you're using your own ideas, your own opinions, or writing about your own experiences. You don't need to worry about citing yourself in your own paper. The second type of information that you don't need to cite is what we consider common knowledge. Common knowledge are things like folklore, fairy tales, or common sayings that everyone in our society or culture is familiar with. The third type of information that you don't need to worry about citing are facts that you find really commonly known or generally accepted in the field that you're writing in. So to sum up, three types of information that you don't need to cite in your paper include your own experiences, common knowledge, and facts accepted in the field that you're writing in. So now that we've finished defining what plagiarism is, it's time to talk a little bit more about how to effectively cite your sources and document them in your paper. So there are many different styles of documentation, and those vary depending on the course that you're taking, or the professor you're working with, and the field that you're writing in. So some common styles that you may have used in the past include the American Psychological Association, or APA style, the Modern Language Association, or MLA style, or the Chicago Manual style. No matter what system that you've used in your paper, all of them have some things in common. They all require that you're citing your information in two places in your paper. The first is called the intact citation, and that includes citing your source immediately after you use the information that you gain from it. The second is your bibliography page, sometimes called the reference page or works cited page. And on that page, you'll be listing all your sources that you've used in your paper from beginning to end. There are three different ways that you can use information that you've gained from your sources: quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. I'm just going to take a few moments now to explain what each of those are. Quoting is when you use the exact words that you find in another source and you put quotation marks around them. Paraphrasing is when you take someone else's words and put them in your own words in your own style. So instead of writing exactly the way the original author wrote it, you'll be blending it more into your own paragraph in the way you're doing your own writing. Summarizing is very similar to paraphrasing, except that it involves taking a large amount of information and boiling it down to a shorter amount of information. So say you're writing a paper where you're required to do a review of a journal article. Instead of writing everything that was mentioned in the journal article, Your teacher will be expecting you to be pulling out the most relevant information and summarizing it into a shorter piece rather than the full length of the original article. Some actions can almost unquestionably be labeled as plagiarism, such as buying, stealing, or borrowing a paper, hiring someone to write your paper for you, and copying large sections of text from a source without quotation marks or proper citation. But then there are actions that are usually a little bit more in the gray area, such as using words of a source too closely when paraphrasing or building on someone's ideas without citing their spoken or written work. Sometimes teachers suspecting students of plagiarism will consider the student's intent, and whether it appeared the student was deliberately trying to make ideas of others appear as his or her own. I have listed 2 resources that you can use when writing your papers. Purdue University has an excellent writing lab called Purdue OWL that assists not just their students and community, but teachers and students all over the world. If you want to stick a little closer to home with resources, you may also use the Texas A&M Kingsville Handbook to help with navigating academic dishonesty. Check out page 45. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions pertaining to this video or about plagiarism, please feel free to reach out to us with the information provided. In order for you to get active participation for this workshop, you must leave a comment on the video and complete the attached evaluation. As always, thank you for your time.